on the Nearpod.
All right. Recording is on the cloud now? All right, perfect. T-48, troubleshooting software. Overall, the process of troubleshooting software is closely following the steps that required, just like any other troubleshooting. The only variance, as I said, when it comes to applications versus hardware is in reference to what is the least intrusive. Least intrusive, you always start from the top to the bottom, which would be the actual software before you get to the physical layer. And then we also mentioned that when it comes to actual networking, it's the other way around. By the end of this session, we should hopefully be able to describe the steps of troubleshooting theory, troubleshooting PC OS with the appropriate tools, troubleshoot common PC security issues, and troubleshoot the common mobile OSs. We've learned already that the steps that take to be able to troubleshoot, if we recall, was to identify the actual problem. You can't just go willy-nilly in there and guessing. We should be asking questions that are open-ended questions instead of questioning the users with yes or no questions. We need to be sure that we're able to identify what exactly is going on, even try to figure out if there was any recent changes to the computer. We only hope and pray that one of these days we do perform backups before we do any type of changes. Next, we need to be able to establish a theory of a probable cause, if necessary, conduct any external or internal research. A lot of these Fortune 500s have, for instance, inside UPS, it was Project Notebook and or any other type of glossary where every given application, internal or external, have their documentation in there to help. Once your theory is obviously confirmed, you want to be able to test the theory to determine the actual cause and determine the next steps to resolve the actual issue. If the theory obviously is not confirmed, then back to square two. Reestablish a new theory or escalate the issue depending on who it is that you need to. You could escalate to obviously to a higher level. Maybe there's specialists or telecom or someone that can be better suited or has the proper authority or capabilities of doing the changes. Not that you don't know how to do it, but maybe your ID is unable to do those type of changes. After we've done that, obviously, we can then establish an action to resolve the actual problem and implement a solution, verify that the system is fully functional. If applicable, we should train the users to be able to implement any preventive measures to document our findings, actions, and outcomes. Now, that was a mouthful. Overall, not applicable because of the fact that you would have to most likely lean on to everything. You have to be persistent. You have to be able to adapt. There is no behavioral skill or mindset that you're not going to be using. I know it says not applicable. What it should say is everything, everything, everything. And I believe right about now, I'll be passing it off the baton to someone else, but I could be taking a wild guess on that one.
All right. For the beginning of this, basically laying out once again the troubleshooting theory that we have talked about several times throughout this cohort. And I will stress to you, please try to commit this to memory because they do like asking about it, especially on 1002. And they definitely want you to understand the order. And one of the things that they may do is they may remove a couple steps from the middle and say, you've just established a theory. What would be the next thing you do? And then you would need to know what would come up next in line, even though the next couple steps may not actually be there. So understanding the order and what all's goes into it is definitely a pretty good thing to kind of study and commit to memory. So we've gone over it a couple times, but take a screenshot of this if you can, or review the slides. Definitely want to know this going in, because you probably will see at least a few questions on the 1002 with regards to it. And here it just kind of maps it out, just to kind of give you a visual representation as to how you would kind of work yourself through the process, whether you know, which parts you would kind of split apart, like test your guess, and then you get down to, is your guess confirmed? If not, then you would go back up and start circling back around. If yes, you would continue on. And understanding at a certain point, if your guesses are, or your theory is not working out, and you have gone through the process a couple times and your theory is still not working out, it may be time to escalate it due to time sensitivity, or it may be something that's out of your scope. Also, remembering to take into account doing internal, external, remembering your levels of escalation. First, it's your internal knowledge. If you're not fully comfortable with it, then you start looking at the internal documentation within the company. If that doesn't provide a clear-cut solution to the problems you're facing, then you start going to external sources, manufacturers' websites, Google, different places like that, trying to see if you can find the answers there. If you can't seem to find the answers there, start looking towards your coworkers, maybe somebody who has a little more expertise in this particular area. Maybe it's networking, maybe it's cloud computing, maybe it's security, file management, something along those lines, data. Then you could go to these people. And then once all those resources are exhausted, then escalate it up to a supervisor or somebody above you. And just try to remember those processes as you go, and try to be able to work through them as quickly as you can, and try to set up a methodology that works for you, and then stick to it. Go through each step methodically over time. It becomes second nature and you'll be able to do it, but you don't want to just jump around haphazardly, because then that actually will end up taking longer in many cases. Any questions with regards to troubleshooting? So definitely come back to this and know these steps, because you will see them again. And it's also a good starting point for setting up your own methodology, how you're going to proceed through the troubleshooting process. All right, troubleshooting security issues. Let's see, Kimberly, can you please start us off?
Many viruses will announce that your system is infected as soon as they get access. Other viruses will cause your system to slow down, cause files to disappear, or take disk space. When determining if a virus infection has occurred, knowing the symptoms is essential. Common symptoms are pop-ups, browser redirection, slow performance, security alerts, PC OS lockup, application crash, Rouge antivirus, spam, renamed disappearing files, hijacking email.
Excellent, thank you. All right. Yes, whenever you're diagnosing your system, these are some of the key things that will just kind of alert you to the point if you have a virus or potentially, and then get you to start working towards fixing them. Pop-ups, many of us are aware of these, and they are exceedingly annoying, although more and more they're not completely an issue because of the common use of pop-up blockers, and they can either be pop-ups or pop-unders. Pop will typically pop up behind the subject matter, so you don't necessarily see them immediately. They will come up behind, so they're not as readily apparent until later on when you close down an application. But again, like I was saying, simply utilizing a pop-up blocker will assist with this, as well as running antiviruses to clean out whatever spyware or adware that might have been placed on your computer to cause this to occur. Any questions with regards to this? Nope. All right. Browser redirection. Farming. I always found this one kind of interesting. And it's basically it's a form of redirection to divert you to another site or something along those lines, to usually for some form of monetary gain. And one of the most common ways it was heard of is, companies like Amazon and stuff like that will have what's called affiliate links, where if you go to a YouTuber or a customer or a website or something like that, they'll tell you like, oh yeah, here's some of the products we use. And if you click on those links, it'll take you to their link, and then you buy a product that doesn't cost any more or less than what you would normally pay, but the supplier gets a cut of that. So what happens is hackers will create affiliate links for a whole list of products, and then they will do a DNS poisoning to insert their affiliate link where you would typically just go straight to Amazon to their website and buy a book. And then they would create it and essentially make it an affiliate link for the hacker. So you go through, you buy the book, you've not paid any more, so you're not really aware of it. The seller, be it Amazon or some small, some mom and pop bookstore that's selling on Amazon, is unaware of it because it looks like a regular affiliate link. So these can go on for a long period of time without actually being detected. And so you have hundreds of these out there, and you're essentially farming for money. So that's where the term comes from. So these are, typically difficult to detect, but if they're trying to redirect you to a competitor, like if you're going to look for a Nissan and you get redirected to Toyota, there's a problem, but there are cases in farming where they will redirect you to a competitor rather than to the regular link you were originally trying to go to. With smaller things, like if you're going for air filters and stuff like that, it may be a little more difficult to pick up on because you're not really paying attention to who's the manufacturer of the air filter. You just want that good air filter. And so you get redirected to who they want you to go to rather than who you were originally going to go to. All right, slow performance. Joseph, can you please read this one for us?
Sure. Farming. Oh, sorry.
No, the next one. Number 3.
Viruses, worms. You want me to read the whole thing or just the bottom?
Just number 3, the bottom one.
Okay, alrighty. Viruses, worms, and other malware can slow performance because they rob resources from other applications, and services are forced to share them. By using Task Manager or Resource Monitor, you can identify applications that are slowing performance of the OS. If the application identified is not a known program that you installed on the system and the program is robbing performance, it may be malicious and should be terminated.
Excellent, thank you. And when utilizing the task manager, it is very, very important. If you are not 100% sure about whether or not that program is supposed to be there and supposed to be running, because it may be attached to other software that you have and legitimately installed, maybe through your company or company affiliates or something like that, do the research on that task before you start killing it and deleting it off the system, because you may inadvertently cause damage to the system because you think something shouldn't be running that actually should be. And it may be operating improperly, and it may be conflicting with something, which may mean you need to go out and look and see if they have updated drivers, or maybe a recent update they sent out isn't working so properly and that application needs to be rolled back. But definitely before you start deleting stuff off the system and shutting stuff down, make sure you understand what it does before you do that. Any questions with regards to that? Nope. Another thing that may end up causing slow performance in the extreme, I think we talked about it earlier, is running. Some people think one antivirus is good, two is better. Oftentimes they will compete with resources and may view each other as a virus. So they will compete for resources with each other and can bring a system to its knees, basically trying to fight with each other.
I got a question.
Okay, go ahead, Faisal.
So regarding the slow performance, does this also include whenever a application says not responding?
That would be considered a locked application or frozen application. And so that's slightly different, but yeah, it would be, tying up resources if it's, in a frozen state. Like if it's continually trying to perform the same action, but is unable to complete it. So it's kind of frozen. So that would chew up and hold on to resources that could be slowing your system down.
Okay.
Make sense? All right. Security alerts. Hey, Chris, can you please help us with this one?
Security alerts. Some hackers find entertaining to issue phony threats disguised as security alerts to keep people scared. Some of the more popular hoaxes that have been passed around are the Good Time and the Irina virus. Both claim the virus would do things that are impossible to accomplish with a virus. When you receive a virus warning, you can verify the authenticity by looking on the website of the antivirus software you use.
Excellent, thank you. And it's also a common practice where they will send you like an alert while you're surfing on the web saying, your system is infected, please download our antivirus to clean your system up. It'll be free for 20 days. And essentially you basically just grant them full access into your system by downloading it. It is a really common one.
My mother-in-law is
And 'cause the
terrible.
best way
She
for a
always
hack-
clicks on these things.
We all have family members like that. But yeah, the easiest way for a hacker to invade a system is to be invited in, and all they have to do is create a scenario where you think they're helping you and they've essentially gained access. All right, well, and sorry. With this one, the biggest thing would be with the security alerts is end user education. Explaining to people, if you don't understand a link, don't go clicking on it. Don't go after it. If you already have an antivirus installed, if you don't, maybe you should. I'm not going to name names, Marvin. Then you would go to those websites and check and make sure of the validity of those viruses and alerts, rather than relying on yet another party who says they want to help you and they have an awesome antivirus.
This is kind of related, but
Okay.
there's a lot of, like, if you're searching online, like I found this a lot when you're looking for Linux commands. There's a lot of people that have, they'll have commands up that if you don't know what they run, they will end up either formatting your hard drive or deleting system files. So you have to be really careful about what websites you're getting that information from.
Yes.
Verify it.
And I mean, I guess a slight confession, when I was back in college, we had to take intro to computers when we first got into school. And this was probably in about my third year. And I had already done AutoCAD and all that fun stuff before I changed universities, but it was a requirement for me to go ahead. And unfortunately, the teacher who was teaching it was not very familiar with computers. And so she was trying to show us that there are various ways to format a diskette, so to use for whatever you want to use it for. And she was explaining the 3 different ways. And then she gets to command line and she couldn't remember what the command line was, which, format a : And so she sat there for about 2 or 3 minutes trying to figure out how to format the disk. And to give you an idea of how beginning of these courses were day one was literally teaching you how to turn the computer and monitor on. That's how basic it was. So we get to formatting a disk, and I tell her the command was del tree star.star, which essentially tells you to delete all the files in the entire computer. After that, I was asked to leave the class and only come back for exams. So people will, mess with people with less, that don't necessarily have the knowledge, especially if it's an anonymous sense or if they're just joking around. Thankfully, in a case, if you tell someone, that particular command, it asks you, are you sure you want to do this? And she caught it before she hit yes. So thankfully that happened. But, there are people out there that, will do things for.
Shame on you. Shame on you.
So, hey, I never claimed to be a nice person. Number 5, PC and operating system lockup. I believe Faison, we were just talking about this, but this would be either, were you speaking specifically for the whole PC or just a particular application, Faison?
Just a particular application.
Okay. You can see that as well, where, it happens on phones, it'll happen, mobile devices, regular computers, where either a particular app will lock up. And sometimes an app can lock up the entire system where nothing is functioning. And, typically the only way you can get out of this particular one is a system reboot, which if the app or whatever was just getting hung up, a lot of times that will correct the issue. But you do want to make sure it was not a virus that was causing this issue. So you do want to run your Antimalware and just check the system, verify everything's okay. And then, after that, you should be okay at that point. If it continues to occur, you need to do a little more digging to see what might be causing that lockup. Look through your logs and event viewer and see what's occurring right before the system is locking up. And that'll kind of give you an idea as to where you kind of need to focus your attentions. Application crashing. This could be just as simple as you've updated your operating system, but the app hasn't updated its programming to match the new operating system, especially if it was a large update from Mac OS or from Microsoft, and now it's not fully compatible, so the app will start to crash. And a lot of times when that starts occurring, then you just kind of go and you look, and many times they will have an update or a patch or something along those lines that will prevent that app from crashing in the future. And then also, if you've already done all these things, you've run the patches, you run, all the updates and everything like that, it's still occurring, maybe a virus, and you should run an anti-malware just to verify that the system is still clean. Any questions with this? Sure. All right. The rogue antivirus. Marcus, can you please read number 7 for us?
One of the cleverest ways of spreading a virus is to disguise it so that it looks like an antivirus program. When it alerts the user of a fictitious problem, the user then begins interacting with the program and allowing the rogue program to do all sorts of damages.
Excellent, thank you. I think we were just talking about this one earlier, where you're searching on the internet, gives you a little warning, says you have a virus, please download our program and we will help you. And that's basically just them infecting your system. Typically, if you're going to be getting end user education is one of the biggest preventers of this, but also you should already have an antivirus in place, and letting people know that running 2 is bad and only utilizing one trusted anti-malware system is typically the way to go. Spam. Anybody who has an email account is very familiar with this, as it is something that seems to plague everyone, varying degrees. Anytime you go to any website, get cookies, or you put in your email address for anything, seems to follow with an avalanche of spam. And so typically what people have like begun to do is literally just create email accounts that the only purpose of that email account is to just give out to people when they ask for your email. And that's, you know, you don't conduct any business on that email. That is just basically your spam email. And then you have your work email and then your personal email, and you don't use those for any other things, and just try to divert everything to that. Interestingly, when the post office was starting to fail as far as, you know, being profitable and stuff like that, they considered taxing people based on emails. And they knew darn well that people didn't send a lot of emails, so they weren't going to tax you on what you sent, but on what you received. So if spammers are sending you 1,000 emails, you're going to get taxed on 1,000 emails. And that quickly got shot down because it's one of those things you can't control how many people send you emails, plus, you know, all these nefarious actors sending out just boatloads of emails. But that was something that actually was being floated for a while. I think it was back in 2005 when they were looking to do that. Any questions with regards to spam? It's impossible to completely get rid of it, but you just try to use the filters within your email systems as much as possible. And depending on what you use the email for will determine the strength of the filters. Unfortunately, if you have really strong filters, almost anything that is anyone who sends you a email that is not in your contact list will immediately go to spam, and you'll lose a lot of stuff if you use it for business purposes and stuff like that. So you have to kind of find that convenience versus security balance that we keep talking about with regards to your spam filters. All right. Renamed and disappearing files. Ronald, can you please help out?
All right, rename disappearing files. One of the simplest ways to create a malware, one of the simplest ways for creators of malware to wreak havoc on a system is to delete key system files. When this occurs, the user can no longer perform the operation associated with the file, such as print, save, and so on. Just as harmful as deleting a file is to rename it and change the permissions associated with it so the user can no longer access it. And hijacked emails.
Excellent. Well, don't worry about that one yet.
Oh, okay.
Don't worry about that one.
Right on.
All right. As far as renaming disappearing files, this one is why it's part of why it's so important to do regular backups of your data and files, as well as set restore points within your computer. Because if something like this comes along and starts deleting, you know, critical files for your system and renaming stuff, I mean, at best, you might have to do a disk repair, but more than likely, you're going to have to re-image, go back to a prior restore point, and then or back up from your saved files, your backups that you already have. So it's can bring a system down for a while when something like this occurs, but it definitely stresses the importance of regular backups of your data. All right, hijacked email. Kareem, can you please read, sir?
Hijacked email. One of the easiest ways to spread malware is to capture the email's contacts of a user and send the malware as an attachment to all of those in their circle. The recipient is more likely to open the attachment because it seemingly comes from a trusted source. The best way to prevent this attack is to educate users of what to watch out for and how to respond.
Thank you. And this one's kind of a difficult one because, I mean, if you have family members who are overly paranoid, you know, we've got people in our family that won't open any hyperlink. Doesn't matter what it is, regardless. You could be sending them a file and say, hey, you could call them ahead of time, say, hey, it's me, I'm sending you this. And they will refuse to open it because they are absolutely and utterly positive that it is a virus or some form of malware. I've never actually had this happen to me, but I do know people who have had their email hijacked. And we have had people within the company have their emails hijacked. And then it basically sent out a blast email to the entire company trying to get people to open emails up and infect the system, you know, far and wide. And those can be a nightmare for IT to track down if it doesn't get stopped quickly, because you'll have people on vacation or whatever, and then they come back and they'll go ahead and click on these links. So, okay, Joseph actually had it happen to him at UPS as well. So with this would be like end user education would be critical, especially if they get a good email within the company and that email is asking for, you know, hey, we're doing an update, you know, we need your sign in and password so we can do it during off hours or something like that. You need to stress to them that IT will never ask for your sign in and password, especially via email. We may have you do it while we're sitting on site with you, but we will never have you, you know, send us your email or password. If anybody requests that, they are not with the company and you need to notify us immediately. All right. Security tools to kind of help prevent these things would be antivirus software, which for the most part is now just basically rolled up into the anti-malware umbrella. Using the terminal, if some of the GUI interfaces become overly hindered by viruses or malware, and using system restores and snapshots and backups to reset your system to a prior state. These are basically will be some of your best tools to help combat this. All right, first, antivirus. We should all be pretty familiar, especially with the first two, McAfee and Norton. I had not particularly heard of Kaspersky prior to coming into this program, but Marvin said he used to work with it as well. And I think Diego said it was more popular over in Europe. Panda, I don't know anybody who's ever used Panda or AVG. I cannot speak for them, but they seem to be some of the bigger players. Definitely when you're looking into this, you kind of find one that fits your needs, but be sure to do the research. Make sure it is a reputable company, not just, you know, Fred's Antivirus or something like that on the internet. A free trial, you know, so, you know, definitely not from a pop-up, but, you know, some reputable company that is known for it. There are some free ones out there, but in general, you get what you pay for when it comes to antiviruses, and especially VPNs as well. There are free VPNs out there supposedly, but I particularly wouldn't trust them. All right. Antimalware programs. They're essentially,
Billy,
what's up? Oh,
can I stop you?
all right, yeah, ice cream truck.
Just
Okay. Back to anti-malware software. Anti-malware, basically, you know, it's a superset of virus scanners set to look for different types of viruses, not just viruses, but also worms and different things like that, adware, spyware, all different kinds of things like that. And when you start getting into anti-malware, typically they will be two distinct, like two basic types that it will work under. You have the signature-based scanners, which essentially is it has a huge list of all different types of viruses, the code that's involved, and it will look at almost any software that comes in and anything running on there looking for those specific signatures of these viruses, and it gets updated on a regular basis, hopefully. And then that will tell the software that this is a known virus. We know what we're looking for, and it will quarantine that system and or eliminate that particular virus. So in the IT field, in enterprise settings, you need to make sure that they are updating these definition lists on a very frequent basis, if not daily, at minimum weekly, because there are, I think, hundreds of viruses that are discovered daily that are out there operating. So you always want to make sure that your signature lists are up to date. Now, to help kind of protect you from zero-day attacks, there is the other kind, the other general kind of anti-malware antivirus, which uses what's called a heuristic-based algorithm. And that is just basically a really fancy way saying it's looking for specific behaviors. When programs start acting in a specific way that's typical of a virus or a malware, they start chewing up resources at a rapid rate. They start renaming files. They start trying to delete critical files. They start trying to gain access to things that they're not supposed to have access to. That's when a heuristic-based algorithm is going to kick in and basically try to protect the system. So its job is to look for unknown viruses that are currently out there and just try to get them based on their behaviors. So that is something that may also come up on the exam. So the two different types of anti-malware, antiviruses you have out there are signature-based, which are all the known viruses out there and the specific codes involved with them, and heuristic, which is looking for specific behaviors. Any questions with regards to that? All right. Terminal. We are getting, if you aren't familiar with it, you're getting more familiar with it. It's the command prompt. So if you have malware that has disabled the common functions within your GUI interfaces in the operating systems, you can jump into the command prompt and get these functions to operate. You can get your virus scanners to run and things like that within the command line and try to essentially rescue the system from there. That's part of why it is very important that you learn these command line functions, how to use them, how to diagnose from there, how to kill open tasks from there, not just from the task manager within Windows, but also how to do it from the command prompt, how to run check disk, how to repair, all from within the command prompt. Those of you who use Unix, Linux, David, looking at you, you are going to be already more familiar with this kind of stuff because it is more commonly used on a regular basis within the operating system. Mac users as well need to get comfortable with the terminal because it is used even less than actually within the Windows environment. Excuse me. Any questions with regards to the terminal? All right. System restore and snapshot. We have talked about this prior, basically creating a restore point, taking basically a snapshot of your computer in a specific point in time. And you can basically set this up one of three ways. You could have them be done automatically, though it does say Windows turns it on automatically, typically does not. You want to go in and make sure that is turned on and it is regularly creating restore points. You can manually create one yourself, especially if you're going to be making a big change to the system, if you're going to be updating it or adding new programs or something along those lines. You want to make sure you create a restore point prior to doing that, just in case something goes wrong. You can always back up to that point and try a different method of installation or a different format of the particular program, or that's just that program or whatever you're trying to install is not compatible with the current system you are operating on, and you don't lose what you already have. Bigger programs such as operating system, large applications and things of that nature will oftentimes go ahead and create a restore point for you before they do the install. This is kind of a nice convenient thing for you, though I would heavily stress, do not rely upon that. Go ahead and make one yourself and have at least a few restore points in line, just in case you didn't catch something prior and you erase a known good restore point. Any questions with regards to system restore and or snapshots? Sure. All right. Best practices for malware removal. All right. This 7-step process you want to remember. CompTIA loves this. So who wants to read for me on this one? Go with.
I'll do it all if you want, Kelly.
All right, go ahead, Joe.
Alrighty, best practices for malware removal. Identify and research malware symptoms. Ensure you are dealing with the right issue. Quarantine infected systems. Prevent the malware from spreading by disconnecting from any network. Disable system restore to avoid the infected system from creating a restore point or returning to one. Remediate the infected systems. Update antivirus or antimalware with the latest definitions and using the appropriate scan and removal techniques. Schedule scans and run updates. Preventative maintenance. Enable system restore and create a restore point in case of future problem. Educate the end user to avoid being infected again.
Excellent, thank you. So you just walk it through it one more time, because definitely, like I was saying, we want to remember these steps. First, you identify that that system has been infected. There is malware running on it. And the first thing you want to do, especially in an enterprise environment, is get that machine off the network as quick as possible, physically create an air gap, disconnect it. Then you can come in and remediate the system, run your anti-malware, because you don't want it communicating with its host if it is, set up to do that. You want to make sure it is completely isolated. Then you go ahead and you try to wipe and clean that system using anti-malware and whatever tools you have available for that. And then you want to set up, if it didn't already have a good anti-malware on it, make sure one is installed on it. Go ahead and get all that put on there. Make sure that you schedule all these scans to run on a regular basis. If not, you can run it to go nightly, weekly, whatever, but do not allow long periods of time between scans. Make sure all that is scheduled. Once you know that machine is clean, everything is scheduled, all of it is where you want it to be. Create a restore point at that moment, because now you have a fully clean system. It is ready to go. Then you can bring it back, reintroduce it to the network, and whoever system it is, educate them on best practices on how not to let this happen again, because you don't want to do something like this on a regular basis. Any questions with regards to this? Okay, so 7 steps for best practice of malware removal. Please be sure to commit this to memory, because it will come up again.
Comes up too much, to be honest. When I did my 1002, I had like at least 6 questions telling me what step in the malware removal should be the scenario be, or what step is this user in, or what should be the next step. Those are like the most common ones they use alone. So
after a system is infected, what's the first thing you should do?
Yeah.
Something along those lines. They will ask you questions a lot about that. And if you're continuing on into network and security, these will come up again and again and again. All right. And with that, I am handing it off to Lazaro.
all right, let's begin. Tools to approach mobile security. So first, we're going to talk about hard resets, then soft resets. Then we're going to talk about ways to stop apps from running, known as closing the app or force close. Well, force stop, I think that's Android term. And then D is going to be resort to factory settings. Let's say everything went bad. You got no choice to reset it back to how it was when you first got the phone. And then E is how to uninstall or reinstall apps. As for the mobile market, usually the easiest way to fix an app that's not working correctly is to uninstall it and then reinstall it. So let's get into the details now and just jump into it. So hard reset. It should be done as a last resort. And the reason why is because you could corrupt your phone if it's open on a certain file when it's reading something in its operating system. That is a technical word that we use in coding. And that's how an error occurs. So if you all of a sudden decide to hard reset any device, including a computer, there's a probability that you can corrupt it. So that's why it's important to be noted here that it says last resort. Now, specifically in an Apple device, usually you just press and hold the sleep-wake button and then the hold button for 10 seconds until you see the Apple logo. Depending on Android, Android has different settings. Usually it's just holding the power button for 10 seconds, and now also do the same thing as well. Depends on which distro of of Android you get. I believe for Samsung, you just hold it, and if you keep holding it for I think 15 seconds, it will do a hard reset. Now, soft reset is a little bit different. Now, with a soft reset, it will keep the data of running apps, so it's less likely that you're going to corrupt something now. Now, here specifically in an Apple device, it's the same thing. You hold it. You hold the button that sleeps in home, but usually gives you the option to select restart the phone. And that's what you're going to do. You're going to restart it. Here with the Apple, usually you're going to see a little red slider that tells you to restart the phone. And then for Android, it's kind of similar, but you just touch it instead. Let me see if I can show it come out. I have to unlock it first. Okay. You see a screen like this. One is for power, one is the restart, and one is some emergency. That's for Android specifically. I don't have an Apple to show, but the Apple is similar, but you have to swipe the one you want instead. Now, when it comes to closing or running applications, and then you need to like stop them, you're gonna have different options. Now, let's look at reasons why you want to stop certain apps. So one thing that's very useful in an exam, they like to stress this, is that you want to preserve your battery. So let's read here. Useful to preserve battery, to avoid using data unnecessarily, and to restart a hanging app. And that is correct. It can be done by pressing the home button 2 times, then find the desired application and swipe vertically to the top of the screen. I believe this is for Apple and is very similar to what you do in Android, depending on the distro you have. The whole point here is that you go to a certain setting. Is this one right over here? This nice little weird little button. You click on that, and basically from here, you can search and go, well, like that, just like an Apple II. That's what they're talking about here. If it's responsive, your operating system, the mobile operating system. If it's responsible, you'll be able to do that. If it's unresponsible, you have to go back to B. And if B is not working, oh no, now you have to go back to A, which is your last resort. Let's see what else we got here. Ah, yes. So let's say none of those steps work in the last slide. None of them. Unfortunately, you're going to have to do the big one. Reset to factory settings. And it's just as it says here. It will go back to its settings when it was in a factory. Just like what we have with our Windows, where we have a recovery partition, where it has data when it was first installed, so does your phone as well. It has its own little partition meant to be used. If everything fails, you have a recovery, and that recovery is the factory that the manufacturer has produced in case everything goes bad. Now, if you can still access your system, you're able to go to settings, and we have settings right here with the iPhone. You usually go to general and then click reset. Resets everything for you. And then for Android, there's a little bit more stuff you got to do. Usually for Android, and this is just a general practice here, is you're going to press the home button just like I did over here, but you're going to click the tap volume. Then you're going to select wipe the factory reset with the volume keys, and then tap the power button to activate it. It's a little bit more work. But to be honest, depending on your distro, some of them are easy. You just go to Android settings and then click restart factory. So it depends on your device. On the test, they're not going to ask you this complicated thing. They're just going to ask you a scenario where you will need to reset it. So keep that in mind. Now, uninstalling and reinstalling apps is interesting. The reason why I say that is that it does double work here on the exam when it comes to questions they want you to know. First one is the most obvious. If you need more storage on your device, well, you can always uninstall apps you're not using. So that's one. Another method of why uninstalling and reinstalling app is important is when apps don't work very well. Sometimes it has happened to me where my app is just not working, and the easiest way to fix it is just to reinstall it. It could be for many reasons why that happened. Maybe it got corrupted. Maybe there's an update that didn't work very well, because sometimes these apps, these not very good apps, I'll call them. Yes, they're licensed, but the issue is that they keep giving you updates and they don't remove the older updates or cache, and then it's up corrupting your application. And then you're forced to reinstall it and it will work, because now you're installing it in a clean state with the update. So that is one explanation of why that happens often. And on the exam, they expect you to know that when it comes to uninstalling and reinstalling apps. So keep that in mind. Now, let's start doing the big part of the exam when it comes to mobile issues, and that is troubleshooting them. A very common one in the exam will be dim displays. Sometimes users don't know how to use their displays. Believe it or not, they make it too dim and then they don't know how to fix it. Intermittent wireless is another very common one in the exam. A lot of questions on the exam about wireless technology. No Wi-Fi connectivity is very oftenly related to airplane mode on the exam. No Bluetooth connectivity usually is turned off or there's something wrong with the pairing. Then we have 5, cannot broadcast to an external monitor. This one is unique. I want to see if I can give you some examples of that. They're talking like, for example, Chromecast. Why it's not broadcasting it. Those are examples there I can give. And then of course, non-responsive touchscreens. And there could be multiple reasons of this one. This one's a little bit more difficult to diagnose. And then apps not loading, just like I mentioned in the last slide about uninstalling and reinstalling your applications, that is one way you can use it to fix it. Now, slow performance could be many things. Maybe the battery is low on charge. Maybe it's overheating, many things. And then of course, 9, which is something I want to mention here, unable to decrypt email. From core 1, what do we remember that could be associated with encryption with mobile devices? Anybody remember? I'll give you a tip. It starts with M. Well, technically speaking S, but
S-MIME?
There you go. Yeah, I give you a good tip there. Yes, if your S-MIME is not working and it is on the exam, if it's not enabled and you send an encryption to somebody and they can't decrypt it, most likely S-MIME is not active or it's not set correctly. And then frozen system, many things can happen to that. We'll go into detail exactly what that is. And then extremely short battery life is a very another common question on the exam as well. No sound from speaker, usually it's just a profile, doesn't have the volume on the exam, but in some cases it is damaged. And then overheating is another common thing you're going to get on the exam, since a lot of times users leave their phones in cars like me. And then when you get there, you try to turn on the phone and it doesn't turn on. You think, oh, just the battery's dead. And then an hour later, it gives me a big warning saying it's overheated. And then I have to replace the phone. Yeah, real world examples. Don't leave your phone in the car. And then system lockout is more of a security system right here, which is very common on the exam as well. Now that I have a little overview of this, now we can go through this very efficiently. So dim displays is exactly as I mentioned here. You can either put it brighter or less. The most common questions you will get on the exam about dim display is either the user doesn't know how to put it back to its regular brightness, or there's something wrong, and I'm going to highlight this, with the auto brightness. Sometimes in the question, they're going to mention that the auto brightness is not working. It could be that maybe the sensor is not working correctly, or the user has it on and doesn't know how to use it. And every time the user goes into a room or something, it's like, hey, what happened? Why is it so bright? Or why is it not bright? Well, if they have this on, that could be the reason. They're just not aware that auto brightness will keep it to the setting that it thinks is best no matter what environment. So that's something good to keep in mind on the exam. Now, let's talk about intermediate wireless. Many things can cause this, but for the exam, we need to know about the most common ones. And the most common ones here is a lack of good signal or there's interference. Increasing number of repeaters or being close to them can address the lack of good signal. Also, reducing device competing for the same channel can also help. So what they're talking about here, good signal means, well, what is your signal strength? Are you too close? Sorry, are you too far or you're close enough? And then interference. What can be interference to my Wi-Fi? This is from core 1. What could interfere?
Cordless phones.
Yes,
That one.
cordless cords. If it works in the 2.4 hertz field, that could be it. What else? What else can interfere? There's all some key words here. That could be it. What happens if I have 2 access points with the same channel? What happens?
Don't they interfere with each other and they don't provide service?
Exactly. If you're using the same channel, especially with the same SSID, name of your broadcast, they're going to interfere with each other. They're confused. They're not sure, wait, should I take that call or should I take that call? And they start colliding, starts causing issues, which explains the intermediate issues with the internet. This is a very common question on the exam, so be aware of that. If you have something in the same channel, there's a high probability you're going to have interference. Same thing that David mentioned about the cordless phone. That is very common with the 2.4 gigahertz range. Very good thing to point out, David. That is something on the exam, believe it or not. But very good. That is one key point I want to put here. Now, as I mentioned about no wireless connection, most of the time in the exam, it's going to be referring to your airplane mode. Or you have to reset the phone as well to get the cellular data working. But usually it's going to be airplane mode for most cases. You just have to read the scenario, and from the scenario, you will know if I have to restart the phone or it's just on airplane mode. Now, Bluetooth is a little bit more interesting, and all of the thing they ask you on the Bluetooth part on the exam is, can I restart this device? If I can restart it, I'm going to restart it. Second, does my device have the ability to discover it? Meaning, do you have Bluetooth on, and on top of Bluetooth being on, are you able to scan? Discoverability, maybe on Android, for those on Android, it's going to say scan. That's the same thing. It's discovering. It's trying to find a new device to pair. And that's the whole point. As long as it's trying to pair, there is not much you can do in detail with Bluetooth if there's something really bad going on. Luckily in the exam, all they care about is, one, can your device support Bluetooth? Can it scan for it, known as discovery mode? And is the device pairable to the device? And can the computer pair to it with the PIN code? That is all they ask for you on the exam. So that's good. Now, broadcasting, as I mentioned, like for example, Chromecast. If you can't, for some reason, broadcast it to an external stream, usually reconnecting it or checking if there's some software involved that's causing the issue. On the exam, they don't give too many questions about this, so it's just good to know to read here. Connecting to a monitor should not be problematic if auto detection is working. Also, phones and monitor need to be compatible, so there is not much you can do here. If your Chromecast works, it works. If it doesn't work, there's really not much you can do unless you really want to dig into the warranty of that device. So
is that what they're talking about, Laz? They're talking about a Chromecast, because that, I mean, that's like its own separate device. So I thought when they're not talking about any sort of USB connection to a monitor or anything like that.
No, they're referring to broadcast, meaning like exactly like a Fire Stick or Chromecast, where it will wirelessly broadcast it to the device. They're not talking about a physical connection, not from a physical line to point A to point B. It's more of a wireless.
What's the one Apple has? Apple does AirPlay, right? That's Apple's.
Kelly, you're the Apple expert. Sorry, I don't use a lot of Apple products. Yep, he got a thumbs up. Yes, you're right. Just like that. So the whole point of this question, and it may sound confusing, when they say broadcast, they're talking about it being kind of transmitted. That's what it's kind of trying to say. It's being transmitted to the air like wireless. Matter of fact, I believe most of them use the Wi-Fi 2.4 gigahertz actually. Now I think of it. Some use Bluetooth, but the whole point is that it is a special device that you use that can broadcast what's on your mobile phone to a TV. I use Chromecast because that's a very common one that people know about, where it's a little device that you put on your TV, usually from the HDMI port. It will then be connected to your internet, or it's able to connect to your phone directly, and then you can broadcast, meaning on your device phone, you can put the app saying broadcast to my TV because it's connected to your internet. It goes by the internet, your local internet, to the TV, and that's how it works. If that makes sense. I know it sounds a little bit complicated unless you use the device. It works with connecting to your internet, then it connects to your phone with your local subnet, and then it kind of broadcasts to the internet to the TV. Kind of weird concept, but it somewhat works. I'm being realistic. It somewhat works. I have had horror stories in my place because my internet where I used to live, my landlord had free internet for everybody. The problem is that everyone's in the same subnet, and when somebody decided to broadcast something they shouldn't broadcast to my computer, I got it. Just to give an example, because my computer was on Google. So, yeah. So, yeah, it works, but make sure you have security, and that's a problem with Chromecast. And the same thing with Fire Stick, same concept. It connects to your internet. You have your phone with the app. You want to click the broadcast button, goes to the device that you selected. Hopefully that makes sense, though. Luckily in the exam, they don't get in heavy detail about it. Just need to know what the device is. Now, non-responsive touchscreen can be many things. It could be maybe something basic. Maybe it's just not responsive because it needs more power. Maybe it's even more basic than that. Like it mentions here, maybe you just have to clean it. Maybe there's something wrong with your case protector or screen protector that's causing it to be unresponsive. That happens sometimes. So on the exam, most likely they're going to have two scenarios. One, clean it, or two, restart your phone. Usually that would work. And the reason why restarting usually works is because a lot of times what happens is that an app will take priority somehow of your screen capabilities. And then guess what? It hijacks it by accident and it's now making it non-responsive. That happens a lot with Android. I'm not sure about Apple. Apple's pretty good with how software interacts with its operating system, but with Android, it's a common issue where you have an app running and the app somehow took permission and is being active, and then you just can't go anywhere else because that app stopped working and caused issues to your screen being able to be touchable. Happens a lot. Restarting it fixes it usually. Now, apps not loading. Well, one option is that you can just reload it, meaning you just close the program and put it back up, just how I showed you on my phone, where I go in the app and I can just restart it. Another option is to reinstall the app. If this does not work, reinstalling the app is your next step. Slow performance. Closing running apps. That's it. That's basically what they're trying to talk to you about here. If your device is slow, try to remove some apps. Now, on the exam, they're going very simple here. There are many reasons why your device could be slow. In the real world, the most common one is that you're running too many apps, but another common issue is that maybe your battery is not working very well. If you have a bad battery, it can drastically slow your performance. If you don't have enough juice, it ain't gonna perform well. And if it crashes a lot, it could be the battery as well. That's why it says here sometimes restarting the device works, because what you're doing is that you're restarting the device, you're cleaning everything, you're cleaning the cache. On top of that, you're letting the operating system know where your battery level is. As we mentioned before, the battery, if you're charging the battery incorrectly, meaning you're charging it all the time, and you're force charging it, as Diego likes to mention, where you're actually playing with the device, let's say you're playing a video game, for example, on your phone, while charging it, you're damaging the battery. And when you damage the battery, it forgets where its memory is. Memory as in where it was supposed to be fully charged. If you mess those things up, believe it or not, that can cause slow performance issues. Because over time, the battery gets worse and worse and worse, and the performance gets worse as well, because the operating system's trying to work with what it has. Apple is a great example of that. If you have an older device with Apple with a bad battery, it will slow the performance that you have on your device. I'm not talking about the lawsuit one where they forcibly do it. I'm talking about the realistic one where if you have an older device with a bad battery, it can cause issues. Now, as I mentioned before about emails with your mobile device, as it comes up here again, CMINE is what they're going to refer to on the exam. So let's take a good read about this. Mail decryption depends upon certifications, and problems can occur when these certifications expire or there is a configuration problem. Majority of the time on the exam, when they give you a test question about this, it's going to be related to configuration problems. They may give you some questions about expired certifications. That one you just have to upload it or hope that their certification has been updated. You don't have to worry about too much about that. Focus more on the configuration type. And of course, to fix it, you can try re-importing the certification. That is, if it's expired, you're trying to get a new updated one, or you're going to delete and import them again from the source, because sometimes you have to delete the certification and update it again. You don't have to go to too much high detail about this. Just remember what CMINE does. CMINE is where you're able to decrypt your emails, and you should be good for the exam on that one. Now, frozen systems. Just as I mentioned before, when you want to do a soft reset or hard reset, if everything fails, unfortunately, you're going to have to force reset the system. It says here, you can try unplugging the device and let it charge and then reset again. What we're trying to tell you here is that you're going to do a hard stop, hard reset. You're going to turn it off, you're going to fully charge it, and then you're going to pray that it works, because maybe you were low on battery and the system froze. That happens a lot with Android. If you have an Android phone and you have like about 5% and also your phone freezes, could be that it ran out of battery. As we mentioned, if you force charge it all the time and force play, it doesn't remember where the memory is. In reality, it was already at 0, but the computer on your phone didn't know that. It thought it had 5%, in reality it had 0. And then what happened in there is that it could not safely turn itself off. So it'll just be stuck there for a while and then die. And the user is not aware. That's why you want to charge it fully again. Now, any questions? I went through this pretty quickly. Oh, okay, very, very good. If anyone has any questions, feel free to let me know. Oh, questions here from chat? Oh, okay, it's just information. Okay. Make sure I don't miss anybody. All right. I kept mentioning about short battery life, and it has its own section here for a reason, and it's mentioned a lot on the exam. Battery life, amount of time before the battery needs to be recharged. Battery lifespan, different. Amount of time before the battery needs to be replaced. And that's very important. There will be a time when you'll have to replace the battery on your device, unfortunately. Now, here are tips to keeping the lifespan of your battery working better. Updating the OS. You want to keep using the best and latest. Avoid too much of a high or low temperature. Temperature is your big killer when it comes to hardware. Diego, I remember him mentioning this all the very time. When it comes to heat, heat kills hardware very fast, including low temperatures. Because what happens is if you have low temperature and all of a sudden you're using the device and it gets hot, from low to hot, you're going to cause some friction. And that friction is going to cause problems to your device. Devices like being in a good temperature, just like humans. We like to be at a certain degree. We don't want to be too hot. We don't want to be too cold, because then we start having issues. Now, this is interesting. Location. And this comes up on the exam. Why would location be turned off if we want to keep the battery on? Anybody have an idea why?
as it's always running in the background, so it's consuming power while it's doing that.
Correct. And usually it consumes a lot. If you want to save a lot of power, just turning off location-based services will save you a lot because it's updating every second. So that's something to keep in mind. Same thing when it comes to your 4G and 5G that's coming up. That also wastes a lot of power. It won't waste as much as G3. I remember using G3 can take a lot of your battery life. Now it's more efficient, but it does take a good amount of your battery. So that's something to keep in mind.
Verizon and T-Mobile just started in recommending to their customers that if they wanted to save battery life, they should turn off their 5G and opt for 4G. But like, what's the point of that? Like, why are you touting 5G and then you have to remember to turn it on and off like that? It must use a lot of power if they're actually going to that length to ask them, recommend that.
Well, the 5G gets you to buy the phone and the program and the plan. Then after that, they say, yeah, we'll only use it if you really need it.
Right.
But they've already got the money from you buying it.
That's a good question. And unfortunately, the reason why is just because of technology. I remember when Bluetooth used to take a lot of your power, but then they came up with 4.0, I believe, is when it became more power efficient. It's the same thing with the 5th generation. Eventually, it'd be more efficient. They say go to G4 because G4 is more efficient when it comes to how you use it. Unfortunately, G3 and I guess G5 as well, they have that problem where it consumes a lot of power. It's just the protocol they use. They don't have a proper protocol that's able to be power efficient. Hopefully that makes sense though. Yeah, so yeah, it's kind of true. It kind of sucks. You pay so much money to get 5G and then they tell you not to use it because it wastes your phone's battery. Very unfortunate. Oh, Kelly's right. They got your money. And then there's some more common ones here. You know, you gotta disconnect any peripherals. If you're, I don't know, using your phone to charge something or have any device like a speaker playing with your Bluetooth, that could, you know, drain your battery. And then of course you can always quit any applications in use. Any applications you're not using, you might as well close it. And then over here, as I mentioned, the most common thing you're gonna find for no speakers working is silent mode. A lot of times users have it on or they have the volume on the lowest setting and they just don't realize it. Hey, my phone's not working. I don't hear anything. You go to the phone, troubleshooting step, check the least invasive. Let me see the settings. Oh, it's off. Done. I've done that many times in my job. Many times. And then there are rare cases where you may have to restart the phone. If anything else, you might as well do a soft reset, see if that works. Sometimes an app will hijack the volume and set it to none, or it just doesn't work anymore. That happens sometimes. And then one solution is either you find the app, which is very difficult on an iPhone. Android, also difficult too, but you can search if you want. Or you can just restart the phone, which kind of makes it much quicker to do than searching for it. All right, and then let's talk about overheating. We only got a few minutes left before we go to lunch. Let's see if we can knock this out quickly. We're almost done. Overheating. Most devices tell you when they need to cool down before they can continue to be used, and they will automatically take measures to protect themselves. And that's true. If it's too hot or too low, your phone will warn you and will turn off itself or be in a low power mode. And it will only be on to tell you when it's okay to turn on or off. Of course, you want to avoid direct sunlight since direct sunlight can easily damage the device, especially if it's a color that absorbs it very well. I remember I keep this in my phone and, you know, here in Miami it gets hot. This thing gets hot way too quickly when I'm trying to use my GPS since I have it right in front of my dashboard. Yeah, on the dashboard. Also, leaving your phone inside a hot car, which I've done many times. Your car can get really hot in certain environments and also really cold. That's also very bad. That can also damage your components in your phone. So it's not only for hot cars, it's also for very cold cars. And of course, you want to make sure your phone is not in a hot source. And a very common hot source is your pockets. A lot of people put them in the pockets and then take it out and they wonder, why is my phone overheating? Well, it's very hot outside and you have it inside your pocket, and that could be one reason. Of course, when a device is hot, just let it cool down. Please, oh please don't put it in the freezer. That's just good advice for everybody. Please do not put it in the freezer. That could do more damage than trying to fix a solution. Now, lockout, well, usually there's two reasons that can happen. One, the OS is locking you out, or two, your anti-malware is locking you out on your phone. And that could be either disabled. You can try to, maybe it has a setting where you say you forgot the passcode. There's many possibilities that you can get it fixed. Usually I recommend a good malware program, because a lot of times they can actually unlock your phone on your computer. And Apple has their own feature. I think it's called My Phone. Is that correct, Kelly? Or iPhone?
Yeah, Find My Phone. I think.
Find My Phone?
Yeah, Find My Phone.
Yeah.
So Apple's really good with that. It does it all for you. You don't have to get a malware, anti-malware program. With Android, you have to get a third party for that. Apple, you do not. Apple has its own primary, Apple itself with iCloud. Very useful feature. In the exam, you will get some questions about that. So keep a lookout for that. If you have Android, it's going to be your own anti-malware. If it's Apple, it's going to be iCloud with the iFind, right? iPhone Finder or iPhone Find?
Find My iPhone.
Find My iPhone. Very important. I'm so happy to have Kelly here. Sorry, guys. I just don't use Apple products. All right. Oh, we're going through security. We only got a few slides. Let's go through this quickly. All right. So we have a list of common problems here: unintended Wi-Fi connections, unintended Bluetooth pairing, leaking personal information or data, unauthorized account access, unauthorized location tracking, and unauthorized camera and microphone activation, which happens more often than you think. Nope. Oh, okay. We go to lunch then. We'll finish the slides after that. All right. See you guys in an hour. All right. Let's get back to T-48 with troubleshooting. We only got 2 more slides here, and then some little quiz as well. So let's get started with that. All right. As I was mentioning, we're going to go through these nice little categories here quite quickly. They're quite short, actually. So unintended Wi-Fi connection. So they're talking about here when you have something automatic that's connecting to any access point. That's a problem, especially if we have an evil twin. So let's talk about it. So over here on A, I would like someone to read that for me. Who here wants to read it for me?
I can.
All right, Chris, tell me.
A, unintended Wi-Fi connection. When AutoConnect is enabled on a mobile device for a particular SSID, it opens the device to security threats. One exploit commonly used with the AutoConnect is the evil twin attack. The evil twin wireless access point simply uses the same SSID as a valid WAP.
Very good. And if I remember right, Marvin was talking about that, about evil twins, where they tried to sneakily put the same broadcasting SSID to trick users. And if you have your phone on automatic Wi-Fi mode, where it's always connecting on its own to whatever Wi-Fi, that's also a serious issue. And that is what they're referring to here. There are many exploits that take advantage of AutoConnect, especially if it's an evil twin. Because a method that hackers like doing is they go to a cafe, let's say it's Starbucks. They know the SSID of Starbucks. They have something called a jammer that will jam the Wi-Fi. And because everyone's connected automatically to that SSID, only thing the hacker has to do is set up his own little Soho router with his own little internet and just broadcast the same ID, jam Starbucks Wi-Fi, and then everybody automatically connects to, guess what? Starbucks' SSID. The hacker is the only one up with the same SSID. And because it's automatic, the people connect to it, everybody connects to it. And now you have a classic man in the middle scenario here. And that is something that will be discussed in Unfortunately, when we get to Marvin's part where he's going to explain a little bit more about it, it's very important that we get that down very good. It's a common attack. All right, let's talk about now unattended Bluetooth pairing. Now, when it comes to Bluetooth pairing, it's, I'll say a little bit unique, but it's very similar to Wi-Fi in certain scenarios. So let's read it. When anonymous devices are allowed to connect to Bluetooth-enabled devices, this is known as unintended Bluetooth pairing. The device pair can gain access to information stored on the device. Good example, where I used to live with a lot of people close to wall to wall. Some people will pair to my computer, and that was because we were in the same subnet. My computer has discovery mode, and when it's on, it allows anybody within the subnet to let anybody with Bluetooth pair to my computer. That's unintended. So what happens is that people will put music on my laptop, and it's one of my neighbors, and I have to disable discovery mode. Because if I don't, Windows is going to keep allowing that Bluetooth signal to be paired to my computer somehow. It's annoying, but that happened to me. Another common thing is, let's say you have a speaker. This is a Bluetooth speaker I have. Let's say I have it on. It's on Bluetooth mode, and someone decides to pair to it. Because unfortunately, the pairing for it is 0000. That is the default for devices that you don't see a pin for. So it automatically attended, and now someone has access to my Bluetooth. And the worst thing about it is that that Bluetooth speaker actually has an SSD slot. So all my data in the SSD slot could be accessed by a hacker. So those are things that they're referring to. Make sure that your settings are correct. Make sure that you only have it paired when you want it paired. Now, leak personal file data. Many things can cause this, but on the exam, we need to know what we're talking about when it comes to mobile devices. And when it comes to mobile device management that Diego mentioned, it is a great feature to have if you want to prevent your users from doing things they're not supposed to do on the phone. And on top of that, wipe the device if it's able to do that. So let's see. Who wants to read C for me, other than Chris?
I will, as.
All right, Joseph.
C, leak personal files data. When authorized users access devices through unintended connections or unauthorized users access absconded devices, they can access the data on the device. Multiple layers of security should be implemented to include data encryption and mobile device management, MDM.
Highly agree. Very good point. Multiple layers of security. So you want to make sure you have encryption. And for those who are in the corporate world, mobile device management. Why? Is to make sure everything is configured correctly. It's to make sure things are patched correctly. It's also a last resort if your device gets lost and you want to remote wipe it. That I'm aware of. Most mobile device management gives you that option where you can just delete everything on that phone if it gets lost. So that's very important for us to know in the exam. When they're talking about multiple layers of defense, they're talking about encryption, devices that manage it, like a mobile device management. Those are what they're referring to. We should be good. All right, let's move to the last slide. And then we get to the little quiz part. Unauthorized account access. Many things can cause this. Many things. So let's read it. Unauthorized account access can give users access to personal files and data to which they should not have access. The most common unauthorized access account is email. This can lead to further compromises. As we're aware of, if I have access to your Google account or I have access to your iCloud, most likely I have access to your emails. And unfortunately, access to email accounts can leak so much information and so much havoc. Many ways you get unauthorized accounts. It may not only be emails, but for the exam, this is usually what they're referring to the most common thing that hackers would try to get into, and that is your email. I mean, it has all your contacts and it also has your personal information somewhere in there too. Very high priced data for hackers. Unauthorized location tracking. This is probably the most annoying one of them all, in my opinion. even legit companies, well, depending on how legit you want to call it, will try their best to find out where you are. As Kelly mentioned, you go to Lowe's or Home Depot, and sometimes these location apps know you're there and they start showing advertisement to you. You can call it a feature, I call it annoying, but this is something that is important for us to be aware on the exam. So let's take a quick read. While location-based data can be, I think that's misspelling, can be very variable when you're using maps and trying to find sites. It can also give away sensitive information if accessed by someone who should not have it. I'll give you a common example. If you guys love Instagram, believe it or not, every time you take a picture on Instagram, there is a geolocation tag assigned to that. So if a hacker is able to get to that image somehow from Instagram, they will know the location of where you took that picture. So if you take a picture of your house and a hacker is able to get that, for example, they can potentially find out where you live. So a little bit of nightmare fuel for those, but luckily you don't have to worry too much about. There's a lot of security. That's like high level hacking. But what they're really talking about here is you want to be careful who you allow has access to your app. And on top of that, even some apps that you download are going to try their best to even track your device, even though you said you don't want it to be allowed. Unfortunately, there are some legit companies that do that. So there's something to be aware of on the exam. And that they're trying to get sensitive information like where you are. Unauthorized camera microphone activation. Another one that's very iffy. Google. If I say, okay, Google, see it works now. Oh, it worked this time. Oh, that's, it depends on you if you think it's authorized or unauthorized, but it's always active. The same thing that just Google did could be any app that you download that you said, hey, I non-authorize you for microphone or camera, but it does it anyway. There is a possibility for that. Let's take a quick read here. The camera microphone can be activated remotely and allow a malicious individual to spy on you. When not in authorized use, the camera and microphone should be covered. In other words, they're asking you to put like a piece of tape or anything that can cover a camera. Now, we're talking about a mobile device here, remember. I don't think it's kind of normal to put a piece of tape on your camera on your phone. I'm not sure anybody does that. But I know I do that for my webcam. My webcam also has this nice little shutter. But like I said, we're talking about mobile device. So that's very interesting with the note here. How do you cover your phone? Cameras. Not a very valid option for most people, but it is mentioned here. I believe, Kelly, you're speaking. I can't tell. I see like yellow.
Well, I said there's sometimes there are cases that will help you cover it.
I wasn't aware. Probably the Otter, right? Because Otter's pretty bulky. Probably has
Yeah, some of the Otter cases. I mean, not every phone option has them, but I believe there are some that have the case covers, and then there are like aftermarket clip-ons that can go on and cover your phone, your camera, and stuff like that as well.
Okay, that's good to know. I thought there will be a case. In the real world, believe it or not, this happens every day. It's very hard for you to know if your apps are spying on you. I don't mean to be, tinfoil, but it is a security issue when I was studying a lot on insecurity. If you have an Apple phone, your Apple device.
Hat's usually my arena.
Sorry, what was that, Kelly?
The tinfoil hat's usually my arena.
Yes, I know. Though I'm being factual here. If Google's always listening to me, when do you classify it as unauthorized or authorized? Same thing for Siri and Contora. Is it Contora or Contana? I think it's Contana from Microsoft, which is the Windows device.
Cortana.
Oh, Cortana. Okay, I got it all wrong.
However you want to say it last.
All right, let's get to the last part, and that is the quiz time. Quizzy quiz. All right, someone help me out here. In which utility is responsible for finding, downloading, and installing Windows Service Packs?
Windows Update.
Okay, 1 vote for D. Oh,
That's
for
2
some
votes.
reason I can't click it. Oh, I'll just go through it next.
3.
All right, everyone agrees. D. Let's get to the next one then. Which boot rec option can be used in Windows to rebuild the boot configuration file?
It's in the name, rebuild BCD.
Rebuild DCD. Oh, now I can click it. Let me see now if it'll let me click this one. Okay, good. Now I'll go back. Sorry about that. All right, rebuild BCD. All right, anybody else wants to vote in? All right, I see a lot of people nodding yes. All right, next one. One of the users you support has a Windows 7 laptop that continues to shut down and restart spontaneously. What would you try first?
Disable drivers one by one.
Okay, what other votes can we do here?
Uh,
Or is that the best one?
Well, isn't sleep and hibernation, aren't those 2 different things?
Well, let's talk about it. Disabling the sleep setting for hibernation. So they're talking about a laptop here. What happens if I have this disabled? What does that mean? That's what you have to think. It doesn't make sense in this scenario. Think about it. Also, we got to read about the issue, restart. So what
Yeah.
should we put?
Reinstall Windows 7.
Reinstall Windows 7? Okay, that's an option. I mean, it does say here what you should try first. So we're going to try to reinstall Windows first.
I think what Chris said, begin disabling drivers one by one until you find
Which one will be least intrusive?
The drivers.
Really?
Disabling sleep, but it doesn't, that's not a restart
That's
though.
not what sleep does. Sleep doesn't restart.
Oh, okay. What's a
Ooh.
hibernation? Anyone know what's a hibernation?
Well, that could appear to be a restart, but it's,
I agree with you,
Now-
but what is a hibernation so we could do, so we can
Keep
rule this one
everything-
out? So we can rule it out completely.
Hibernation keeps everything in memory while you're have the when you close your laptop, so you can go
Very
back.
close, very close.
You can open everything up automatically. It keeps everything safe in memory. So when you close it and when you open it, it opens up everything.
Could you change the word memory for something else though, instead of memory? What do you think?
Setting?
It would be maybe to
Hard
something
drive, isn't it?
long-term, right? Hard drive, yeah. Memory short-term, right?
Yeah.
So hibernation is a little bit different than sleep. Sleep turns everything technically off and on standby per se, but it's on.
keeping power to memory.
The power will stay on. Hibernation, what happens is you need disk space.
Yeah,
Everything that's open must be saved. Everything that's completely open, that Word document, Outlook, everything. So imagine if your hard drive is running out of space and you chose hibernation. You think he'll be able to do it?
No.
Mm.
Would it maybe restart all of a sudden and not be able to complete its job?
Oh,
It may crash, right? And restart.
okay.
Out of all the ones that are there, the least intrusive would be out of the choices that they gave me, which unfortunately all of them technically are right. See what I mean about these questions and what they're doing? All of them technically are legitimate reasons. I can go and reinstall Windows and may fix my problem, right? I can disable drivers as we learn to see who is the one that's creating a conflict. If it is a driver that is creating a conflict, I could even swap out the motherboard just in case if the motherboard itself is the one that's the problem, right?
I saw that
But,
as because it's a laptop.
And then no, because it says try first, least intrusive.
The easiest is to
The
Yeah,
disable.
easiest out of all
sleep
those is
settings.
that one.
That's why I said
Easy.
probably the motherboard's the last one. That's not.
Yeah.
That's
So that's where they're getting us, is because they gave us all legitimate answers. They're all legitimate answers to be able to fix what they're
But
talking
C is
about.
not, C isn't a legitimate answer. Sleep has its own settings. Hibernation has its own settings. So how
But it's
would,
under sleep settings.
no, but those are two different things that you can set. So I guess I don't understand how it seems like
Okay,
it's a.
let me rephrase this. It's like saying your Wi-Fi card and your network card are not under network settings. They're both under network settings, and they're both under power or sleep settings. This question is horrible, to say the least. If you try to read into it too much, obviously it will confuse the limit. I agree with you. Sleep is completely different
Okay, I get what
than hibernation.
And that's the
But
easiest one.
it's power settings is what they should have said instead of sleep settings. I would have to agree with you. I believe it's called power settings nowadays.
Yeah. I didn't realize that if you go into hibernation mode and you don't have enough disk drive space, so that's what would happen. It will continually loop.
It'll if it's trying to go into hibernation, it will restart because it can't go into hibernation.
Right.
It's gonna crash in the moment that it crashes, it tries to reboot.
Okay.
Yeah, there could be multiple reasons, but it just wants you to try the troubleshooting theory.
The least intrusive. They're not saying it's gonna fix it once again. Remember about troubleshooting and how we're gonna have to be persistent, going around in circles aimlessly. This is part of what we need to learn, is that we need to do the least intrusive out of all the possibilities of stuff that can be the right answer. We've got to start off with the least intrusive, the one that can hopefully fix the issue. If not, proceed to the next one. What's the next level?
Right.
Agreed. All right, let's get to the next question. Good job though. Good job. It's not an easy one, like Diego said. And don't go overthinking mode. I tend to do that all the time. Windows 7 includes a feature called a blank, which is copy of your system configuration that can be used to roll back the system to a previous state if a configuration error happens. What are they talking about?
Restore point.
Oh, everyone said restore points. So I guess we stay with that, right? Good. Get to the next one. Which of the following allows you to register and unregister modules and control for troubleshooting purposes? Interesting.
That's Reg server 32.
Okay. Who else agrees or disagrees?
I agree. I know what the other ones do, and they don't do that.
Oh, so you did deduction. You're like, I know it's not this, or that, so it has to be that. Okay. So my question is, what is this? What does it do?
When you try to start an application and the computer says such and such DLL is missing, you can see if the DLL is in that application's installation install directory or working directory. Sometimes it's a DLL actual directory. And if it's in there, you can just type that in a probably if you're in a corporate world, you have to have an admin command prompt, and then type that command space and then the DLL name. It's either going to register or it's not. If it doesn't, you just go to a good working system and try that. If that doesn't work, then you have to reinstall the application.
Agree. And on the exam, they give you an option to reinstall the application instead of doing all that. So it depends on the scenario. If to me personally, I just reinstall it if possible. It's easier. I don't like messing with my registries or my DLL files.
Right, you just have to remember that command. Run it from like the C drive with the path to that DLL, and it literally takes 3 or 4 seconds. A little bit faster than reinstalling the program.
Got it. All right. Let's go to the next question. One of your users claimed that their hard drive seems to be running slowly. What tools can you use to check to see how fragmented the hard drive is? What can we use? Tip, read it closely. What is it asking for?
Disk analyzer.
Disk analyzer, why?
Because that's what
Very
it
important
does.
question. Why?
The defragmenter, but
And just, it says to see how fragmented the disk is. So I would think check disk.
Okay, check this.
So does anybody want to check disk cleanup so we can have all four?
or
Sorry, give me one moment.
is that faster than light?
So which tool allows you to check if a hard drive is fragmented?
I would have thought disk defragmenter, because it'll check it first and it lets you see how fragmented it is, and then actually, if you actually want to go through with it to actually defragment.
They surely convinced me on that one. Check disk checks the disk for errors and bad sectors and tries to fix it, I think, right? Disk cleanup cleans up the disk temporary files, internet
Right.
files. Disk analyzer. Anybody ever heard of that guy?
Nah.
When do we use that? When do we use disk analyzer? Anybody used it before?
Nope, I haven't.
So I would have to take a wild guess from the Windows tools. We're talking about Windows tools. I don't think disk analyzer is a Windows tool. I think that is a off the shelf from God only knows who. If there is a such thing. I've never heard of disk analyzer.
Yeah, I mean, the disk defragmenter, when you activate it, it scans it first. And you'll see like a graphical, last time I did, you see a graphical representation of how fragmented it is. You can see the memory in different, well, the files in different colors along the whole bar. And then it'll actually, do you want to go ahead and defragment?
Any other questions or concerns on this one?
No, I think Albert, what he just said is correct. Disk defragmenter. I'm changing my thought from check disk, because you can it tells you right in the beginning how fragmented it is.
Exactly.
When you run that.
Definitely. All right. We have for today some labs available to be able to complete. And I believe this is the point where we say, my friends, we should be able to describe the steps of the troubleshooting theory, the troubleshoot PC OS and the problems that are, and the appropriate tools with it, troubleshoot common PC security issues, and lastly, troubleshoot common mobile OS. Any questions on this?
I'm gonna just have to go back and read it